Welcome to the Amplify Digest. I'm your host, Lars Schmidt, and it is Black History Month. And I want to open with this tremendous resource from Madison Butler. It's a resource we've shared before on the Digest, but I want to reference it again, especially for those of you that are watching and viewing and maybe involved with Black History Month programming for your organizations. This is a tremendous compilation of Black speakers that you will want to reference as you look for people to bring into your organizations and pay as a part of your Black History Month celebration and education effort. So this is definitely something you're going to want to reference. And a big hat tip to Madison for putting this together and her leadership for all of us. On the topic of DEI, I also want to give Culture Amp a shout out for their recent report on the landscape of DEI, and really it gets into a tremendous amount of data that they have around where organizations are making commitments and where they're falling short and what's making a difference. And particularly, I think, coming out of the conversations after George Floyd's murder, many companies, especially in tech, made a lot of big pledges and commitments towards DEI efforts. Where do they stand today? And this report actually shines a light on some of that. So a huge hat tip to Aubrey Blanche and the team over there for releasing this for all of us to learn from. This next article I really enjoyed. I realize it's Business Insider. It's behind a paywall. You should subscribe. They've got lots of really good articles, but this is one of them. And it really gets into the kind of evolution of why Americans kind of suck at work-life balance. That's the paraphrase version. It's much longer. It's much more in depth. I'm paraphrasing. But, ultimately, there's some really fascinating data on kind of the evolution of our attitudes towards work in the U.S. and hustle porn culture. It kind of covers all of that. And it also compares and contrasts, the U.S. mindset towards some of our other peers around the world. And, spoiler alert, we're pretty terrible compared with our global contemporaries. So really interesting piece. And again, it'll be interesting to see how these attitudes begin to shift as we continue to move through the pandemic and perhaps recalibrate our priorities, recalibrate flexibility, have more opportunities to work in hybrid and remote settings. We'll see what the longer term impact of that is, but I'm hopefully optimistic. This is another tremendous resource by Joris Luki at PIN. So he's the co-founder and CEO of PIN. And this article really gets into it's not even an article, it's a book on how to design and create company values. And so calling upon his deep experience and expertise really paints a picture and a roadmap for how organizations should be thinking about designing and even kind of recalibrating their values as an organization. So definitely recommend you check that out. Yours is also a huge proponent of open source. And so this is a free resource for all of you. So again, the link to that and all the articles I'm going to reference can be found in the blog post with all the show notes and more. A toast to all the rejects. So if you work in HR and people or business, frankly, just about anywhere, you're going to be exposed to rejection in some environments and roles more than others. And so this is an interesting piece in The Atlantic that actually got into maybe how to reframe how you think about rejection and celebrate some of those rejections. And they get into the article is very focused on academia where rejection rates are very high for a range of reasons. But I think it's a good way for us, particularly in the kind of modern and progressive HR and people ops space. Oftentimes you're trying to push the boundaries. You're trying to do things that haven't been done before. And there's no guarantee that it is going to work. And so when you're in that kind of pilot and scale model, you're going to be eating rejection a fair amount. And so I think this is another way to hopefully help you reframe that and not curb your appetite for taking risks. This was a great Twitter thread I wanted to reference on imposter syndrome. It's something that, we've talked about endlessly. I think everybody experiences this. I experience this at times. And so I think I really like this thread of just ways to kind of maybe rewire some of your thinking and framing to avoid and overcome some of those moments where you might feel that you're in over your head, which again is a phenomenon that happens to all of us. And I also want to reference the return of the Redefining HR podcast. So season 7 kicked off on Monday with Ian Cook. And we get into some of the data behind the Great Resignation, the Great Realignment, whatever you want to call it. So you can check that out on the blog. And it's going to be a packed season with incredible guests. So I'm really excited to bring more of those conversations to all of you. So that's a wrap for this week's Amplify Digest. I'll see you next week. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you then.